Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 189 of the Unsecurity Podcast. I'm Oscar Meeks, joined by the always great Brad Nye. How you doing today, Brad?
Doing well. It's a little steamy out, but, other than that, not bad. Kids are
beautiful.
Cool. It's quiet.
There you go. Getting some alone time. House is quiet. Got to focus again. That's got to be good.
Yep.
Yeah, things are great here in Kentucky as well. Just got back from a trip out west to Denver where there was absolutely no humidity. Well, we were staying up in the mountains outside of Denver. There was no humidity. I came back to Kentucky and hopped off the plane and realized how much I hate humidity. But it was a nice break, and it's good to be back.
Nothing like walking outside and you're just instantly damp.
Yeah, just instantly sweating from stepping into the air. It's always wonderful. So we do have a couple of guests on the show today. We'll introduce shortly. We have Jeremy Young and Chris Furner from Blumira. So we're going to have a nice, fun conversation with them about their perspectives on security today, challenges they observe, and how we're working together to solve those challenges. I think first we want to hit a couple of news articles really quick. I did want to just give a plug too before we dig into the news articles. As a reminder for everybody, we want to start doing more Q&A and mailbag responses for you guys. So if you have questions that you would like to get answered, send us an email at unsecurity@protonmail.com. As promised, I did check the mailbox. We're very behind on a lot of things, but I did want to say, just send a quick thank you to a couple people. Jennifer had sent a really nice note in just regarding our mental health episode. It was myself and Eric, and she said some really kind words. We appreciate that, Jennifer. I'm happy to hear that episode was helpful for you, and thanks for that feedback. We really do appreciate that. And then another thank you quickly to Michelle, who sent an email in, kind of the same thing, the series we did earlier about the talent shortage in the information security industry. Thanks, Jennifer, for your kind words. We appreciate that. And again, glad that information was helpful. So with all that said, let's hit some news. Brad, what do you got today, man?
Yeah, so I think the one that was interesting, well, there's a couple. I sent you one. We won't really hit on it, but Krebs on Security has that cybercriminals are now hiring people to conduct physical attacks, so shootings, firebombings, things like that. So fairly, it's sad, but it's an interesting read. But the one that I think really looking at is TeslaGun primed to blast a new wave of backdoor cyber attacks. So EvilCorp ransomware gang has used it to carry out mass phishing and targeted campaigns against more than 8,000 different organizations and individuals. So it's not slowing down. Yeah,
be on the lookout there. And EvilCorp is a sanctioned APT as well. So if you do fall victim
you can't
for the ransom attacks, you're not going to be able to pay those guys. Are there specific sectors that are being targeted today?
It says 3,600 in the U.S., but it doesn't. I didn't see anything specific. I know that K through 12 has been targeted now with school going back the last couple. Yeah, no, there's nothing in. It doesn't have anything specific to the two sectors.
Okay. Well, kind of chaining off of that one and another related story, EvilProxy essentially is a phishing as a service offering that's currently being sold on the dark web. So essentially, and it's a way for attackers to successfully, easily bypass two-factor authentication. So essentially, if you're an attacker, you want to target an organization, you can go into the dark web, identify this service, which is EvilProxy, and you pay for like server time. So essentially, you can buy blocks, I think, of like a week or 10 days or up to a month of service using the tool. From there, too, they have a whole catalog of really good templates that are built. So they specifically, I know, target Apple, Dropbox, Facebook, Microsoft, Google, Instagram, Twitter, Yahoo, all the big boys are in here. They have templates that are pre-built that you can use and launch the attack using their service. And essentially, it's a proxy that's stood up in the middle to act as a phishing server. So you lure your users to a phishing page, they land there, and then the attackers have the opportunity to harvest those valid session cookies because they're sitting in the middle, and then they can use that to authenticate rather than using usernames, passwords, and 2FA tokens. So scary. I think this is kind of one of those things where We push constantly for MFA, and MFA is obviously better than not having MFA, but we have to understand there's no silver bullet in security, and we're going to see attacks continue to evolve there. So.
I have to say, but I got MFA, I'm safe.
Yeah. Well, all right, cool. Let's get to our guests. As mentioned, we have Jeremy Young and Chris Furner from Blumira. Thanks for joining us today. How you guys doing?
Pretty good, Oscar. How you doing, man?
Doing great. Yeah, glad to have you, Jeremy.
You guys were trying to trigger me because I worked at Duo and all the MFA talk. But yeah, that having MFA is better than not having MFA.
Yes.
There are different forms, but always choose the highest and best form, which is a security key, and then app push-based, and then it goes down from there.
Yeah, we talk about that a lot too, like with, our red team engagements, folks have push notifications, just click to approve, right? And those are our highest likelihood of having success when that's the method of 2FA that's employed, because, our victims are humans just like we are, and they have patterns just like we do. And if they're logging into work at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we know that, it's a good chance you can push a few notifications through, and they're going to be like, oh, it must be Outlook being goofy. Sure, boom.
We've had incidents,
and then we're in. Yeah, so
we've had an incident where they did that. The attacker got in, the user wasn't even at the computer. Okay.
I remember when I was still there, and this is like the generational fun thing of when you've been in security for a while. So you guys remember RSA security tokens, where you actually had physical tokens walking around with them, and of course there's like seed sharing and that kind of stuff. But Duo was really big into universities at the time. And some very industrial, like very, very venturing students decided to build an app it's an app that auto accepted every push that was sent to the phone.
Never Duo or don'tduo.com or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it was just like, come on, guys. But yeah, fun times. Something along that line, though, we just saw 1Password is adding Git commits. You can digitally sign Git commits and sending out SSH keys. So that's pretty cool.
That's really cool.
We happen to use 1Password, but that was in the news today.
Yeah, that's very cool. Happy to hear that. And so, Chris, first time meeting you. Thanks for being on the show. So what's your role with Blumira?
Yeah, so I work with Jeremy on our partner team. So I'm an SE or solutions engineer, sales engineer on the partner team. So I spend a lot of time talking to our MSP partners, kind of technical questions, kind of talking about their tech stack and where we fit in, that kind of stuff. And that's, that's what I've been doing for a long time. I used to work in an MSP. I used to be working in a security role in an MSP. So, kind of a lot of the same conversation, just kind of the other side of the fence, but still, spending a lot of time talking to MSPs and, helping them with their security programs, kind of talking about how Blumira does our thing and, how that applies to how MSPs business practices work, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Where are you guys located?
I'm in Grand Rapids, Michigan.
And I'm down in Austin, Texas.
Oh, nice. Yeah, cool. We spread the country, the center, Midwest really well. So I'm in Kentucky.
Yeah, we've got a line.
Minnesota, so boom.
Yeah.
Jeremy's in the home with that good barbecue. I'm jealous.
I lived in Philadelphia for a while, and everybody's like, "Oh, you must eat Philly cheesesteaks all the time." It's like when you live there, you can't unless you want to have a heart attack, you don't want to eat that. So as much as I love smoked brisket, it's not like a weekly thing. But tons of good barbecue down here.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Aaron Franklin. I think he's the king of the brisket.
Certainly the most widely known. Going to Texas Monthly Barbecue Festival here in a couple months. Looking very much forward to that. I've been doing it before, and I've learned because it's 100% meat. You can't just go around and sample.
Yeah.
So you have to bring 1 gallon bags, and you just walk around and get your samples and take a tiny piece, and then dump the rest.
Nice.
And then you just freeze it, and you have food for 2 months. It's great.
Nice. Yeah, very cool. Very cool.
Down there, my gosh, 8-9 years ago, we went out to Salt Lick for
the original one in Driftwood.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
it's like a compound. They've got
it's amazing. Cooking it like big open right in the middle.
Yeah, very cool. So let's talk a little security stuff then. Why don't you guys first tell us a little bit about Blumira?
Sure. So Blumira is SIM really made for small teams, made for IT teams, as opposed to the big kind of corporate enterprise SIMs made to be run inside of a SOC. So security information and event management, if you're not familiar with the acronym, we love acronyms in security, but essentially take all of your logs from all of the things and send it up to Blumira's cloud. And we write all the parsers, we write all the detections. Every alert that gets triggered gets sent along with detailed analysis and step-by-step playbooks that IT people can consume and you can remediate and then get back to your life. The log retention is 1 year by default in our advanced edition, and it covers a lot of the requirements that are incoming from the cybersecurity insurance world of Microsoft 365, Windows logs, firewall logs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And these requirements are coming down to SMBs and their partners, MSPs, their IT outsourcers. And there's not really a solution that is manageable in this space. That's why I came over here. From my background is from Huntress and then Duo before that, and Verizon on the wireline side before that. And so I've been kind of following the industry guidelines and industry compliance regulations as they start to migrate. And it's been a pretty good strategy for being on the sales side, on the provider side. But Blumira is solving that solution for in a market that has had no good options before.
So you hit on something I was just really happy to hear about, and that your default log retention at your base is 12 months. Yep. That's awesome. I was just trying to pull up some stats. So our marketing team did a really fantastic job. We put out a blog on just, we gather a lot of statistics and on kind of the state of health of the industry. And I'm trying to look at this number, but as far as like the people out there today who have absolutely no logs at all, they don't know, hey, I don't know, it's default, we're not storing, we don't have any retention plan, but that is around 50%. 50%. And then even the folks that are logging right now, it's like less than a quarter of folks are storing those logs for more than 90 days, right? And so we talk about that a lot from the blue team perspective. When we get in those environments and you have a very limited amount of logs and default log settings, our ability to have success in a forensic investigation or a chance at that just decreases significantly. And so, that's an absolute, and that's awesome. You guys are doing 12 months by default.
The default log setting was something you hit on that I was going to mention too, is that most things don't have very good logging turned on by default. And so unless you are guided to the right place in terms of how to turn these up to 11, we're doing logging, and then you get into the logs and there's not anything of value there. And so what's the point? People especially in the SMB space who don't have the security expertise of the people on this call and people on your team need guidance around that. And those 50% who are doing nothing, this is a layup. And it's something that we always say in security, if it's not if, but when, right? And when that happens, the pain is going to be dramatically reduced if you have voluminous logs and you've have had them for some time.
Oh, for sure. Well, it's a gold mine for investigators. Yeah.
Right. Well, it's an underserved market, and you're going to have, with the new regulations, all these car dealerships that are now suddenly going to have to have that.
Chris, you were just looking at this, right?
Yeah. Was it like December 9th or something? You got to have this done. You got to have, because it's, there's a lot of industries like car dealerships too, where they're handling consumer financial data, and they don't seem like they're a bank. But they kind of are. They've got a lot of stuff they're sitting on, and the window is closing where you can just be reckless with consumer data.
Yeah. It would be shocking for a lot of people, I think.
Yep.
Yeah, we talked about that a couple, episodes ago, and it's auto dealerships, right? But some of the other businesses that fall under that umbrella is interesting, like career counselors, businesses that print and sell checks fall under the umbrella as well.
Oh yeah.
money transfers, check cashing businesses, accounting, tax prep, travel agencies, mortgage brokers. So it's a pretty big umbrella, and change is coming real soon for those folks. And from like what I've been able to gather to the temperature, folks in those industries, a lot of them still don't know what in the hell they're going to do. They're completely confused by this, and they're trying to figure it all out. And then on the flip side, too, what we've seen is, who would be surprised by this, but a bunch of new security companies that have popped up just to serve this, and they're selling this package that they say is going to make you compliant for like $300 a month. And I'm like, get the hell out of here. That's not going to happen. It's not possible.
It's a trap.
And so
at least with
it's totally a trap.
At least with the NADA, the auto dealers have this almost entirely, centralized organization above them that can provide guidance. But there's a lot of smaller industries where it's very fractured. And nobody's passing down information or recommendations or vetted vendors, that kind of stuff. And there's a lot of these companies, like you said, popping up just trying to deliver some very questionable solution.
Yeah, and I've learned this from, like, we've had conversations with some dealerships and some folks inside that industry, and they have, like, the NADA is helpful, but then I've learned a lot of dealerships operate in, like, Super 20 groups or Super 30 groups, things like that, or out where they'll have 30 dealers that say, hey, we don't really know how to conquer, and not just cybersecurity, but, like, other things, like, what are we going to use for our accounting software? What are we going to use? Who's going to be our tech provider, right? And so these groups kind of come together, and, you have one entity that'll serve all 20 of those dealerships. And so I was surprised to see that. It makes sense. It's an efficiency we don't see in a lot of other businesses, even if they're a competitor with each other, like, hey, well, let's at least work together to try to minimize our costs on these specific things. So that was cool to learn.
Yeah.
Cool. But yeah, I worry about those folks because they got a long way to go in a short time to get there.
That's the American way, right? Just wait till the last minute.
Yeah. So another thing you mentioned too, I just wanted to touch on, is you did mention you guys build like custom parsers. So I would assume then that means you guys are probably pretty versatile in the types of products that you can ingest. Is that true, or are you guys kind of limited to, we only work well with these specific products?
So we have our documented integration list on the website, and it's just blumira.com/integrations. We can ingest anything, syslog, ceph, leaf, into our sensor. Whether or not there's a parser already built for it would be the question there. If it's listed on our integrations page, yeah, we've got parsers, we've got detections. But that's part of the thing of in order to get the most security value out of an integration while working with Blumira, it needs to be a documented one that's already available, because that's the ones we've already set everything else up for. Otherwise, we can ingest random syslog from whatever thing it might be, and then if you can tell us what you're trying to get out of it, we can probably write a custom detection for you, but you're going to get the most value from day one if your stack aligns with our document integrations. Because in a world where we're responsible for all of that stuff, we can't do custom requests for every single customer that comes on board. And everybody's got that one random thing that they've been using since forever, and we need to get logs out of it, and sure, send us over a syslog string, but that's more for compliance purposes. The security value stuff, the identity providers, the email providers, the firewalls, the Windows devices, we've got all that stuff covered.
Cool.
Well, it's good to know, though, even if there isn't necessarily a parser, you can at least ingest it and keep it, and that's important.
And we build parsers based on feature requests and based on demand. So if it's a popular product, it's probably already on our list for getting a parser created, but we do respond to customer feedback in that area.
And so you mentioned before too, like you guys are more geared toward that smaller team, right? Smaller IT team, giving them the functionality and really probably sorting through and getting them the data they actually need to care about, right? Versus being in that SOC environment. How are you seeing your consumers adapt to that model? Are you seeing that they have success, they're able to work through these things, or are there new challenges that come up that says, oh crap, it's, this is one more thing with already strapped tech team?
Well, Chris, you were a practitioner. Why don't you take that one?
Yeah. So, I think one of the challenges that you definitely see now is people not wanting to take on tools, in the smaller businesses, take on a lot of tools that require either hiring a new person, because the tool costs maybe $100 per month. It might cost us $2,000 a month just to have somebody run the tool. That's the real expense, right? So we see a lot of, challenges with smaller businesses not wanting to bring on tools that are, big in labor investments. And that's, I think, kind of where Blumira really hits heavy, is that we do a lot of that work on our side. We don't need to have somebody spending a lot of time, feeding and caring for Blumira. We're taking care of all that stuff on our side. So once, your admins get Blumira up and running, get the logs feeding to it, get the alerting set up and everything, it's very lightweight in terms of, being able to be maintained. And then when we bring stuff to you, we're kind of doing this like a hybrid SOC model where we have experts on hand to help, but we're bringing good detailed analysis, not just raw logs to you in an alert, because ultimately a lot of IT teams know their environments better than we're going to. So if we spend a lot of time writing reports, we're limited by what we can interpret from the reports. We don't know what vulnerability scanning or what new admins are being created or in an environment. Mm-hmm. So if we bring interpretation with the logs, that kind of allows you to not have to invest in an expensive SOC, but still have a really good tool that brings you detailed analysis and not, just raw logs you guys spend a lot of time interpreting or, asking for help at that point. And we're still there to help, but we bring a lot of stuff to you before you need to ask for help.
In the SMB space, everybody wants an easy button. They just and that's why those solutions work that say, oh, here, just $300 a month and you're compliant, because people are looking for that type of thing. The hard truth is that security is really just like tier 3 IT people plus paranoia. and in order to remediate something that is an actual problem, it really requires two things. It requires the IT admin credentials to do the thing in the tool, and it requires the local context of the situation to understand, all right, is this really an admin that performed this function, or is this a rogue administrator that's been phished or something? And all of that is going to eventually get back to the IT team. And so people look at outsourced SOCs and they're like, I'm going to hit this easy button. I'm just going to pay somebody to do it. That doesn't take away the fact that it's going to come back to you in the end. And it's just going to come back to you with notes saying, here's what you need to do. And then you're going to have to go do it. So if we can get you to that, so if we can get you to that point faster, then it's ultimately a better outcome. But there's two types of people who have felt the pain of dealing with a SIM before and people who haven't. And there's two very different experiences going through the setup process and the management process between those. Because if you've dealt with one before, we are the best thing you've ever touched. If you haven't dealt with one before, we're more like what Chris mentioned, another tool. And because you don't have any frame of reference for how much better it is than the 20 years of history in this particular lane of just really painful solutions.
Yeah, it's been tough for sure. So how well are you guys seeing, and, this is something we always talk about, right? And I like your analogy there, Jeremy, but IT people aren't security people, right? It's different. It's a different role, and we want to make sure everyone understands that too. And I think we talk to a lot of people about that. You can't expect your network engineer to be your security guy as well.
Correct.
But beyond that too, that doesn't mean that they don't function in part of the security role, meaning that they have to be helpers in that response program, right? When you have that identification, it's typically going to be your technical person who's doing the remediation work with the guidance of security intelligence. And so it sounds like that's the model you guys are working. How well are you seeing for those technical resources when they get the alerts and they're able to respond and you guys are providing them? It sounds like a great data set so they fully understand that solution. Are they having success in those remediations? Or are you seeing continued problems and confusion?
From what I see and we mostly our scope is working with managed service provider partners. So they are technical by default, which is helpful. Right. So they show up with all the technical admin creds and they show up with local context. And so many security tools just ship alerts over the fence without any context whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And those are the ones that when they're starting up another security tool that they're like, oh, another thing, because it's just pile it onto the alert pile over there. So the fact that we provide analysis and instructions is kind of mind blowing, and they generally do have pretty good outcomes. Where they get hung up, you can phone a friend, basically. You can ask us, and we provide that security guidance that they need to get there. But where they do get hung up, or have in the past, is MSPs use a lot of tools that look like malware. And so we can cause some noise when like an RMM is running PowerShell script across the environment or whatever, or a vulnerability scanner is lighting things up. And so recently we've just pushed in production detection filters, which AKA allow listing, AKA whitelisting. So for any filter, you can add a filter and say, for this IP address, do not send this detection, which dramatically helps lower. It's already pretty low noise, but it dramatically helps lower that noise so they can not have to get away from what they're doing, which is ultimately a MSP's goal, is to the less that they can look at anything related to security, the better.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. MSPs use a lot of tools that look like malware.
Oh my god!
The other thing is that I've seen too is like if you switch MSPs to like all of our listeners out there, make sure you get rid of your old MSPs tools. We have seen.
Chris, you want to comment on that?
Yeah,
you'd be surprised. I mean, a lot of times the MSPs don't have this is some of the more low-functioning MSPs, but they don't have a good offboarding plan. They don't have scripts that are updated to offboard all their own tools. Yep. And sometimes those tools don't come out cleanly without the cooperation of who operates them. Like all the good EDR tools out there, they do not let go well. If you try and rip them out, you've probably completely burned the operating system. So you better hope it's on workstations and not servers where you're trying to rip that stuff out. It happens.
Yeah. It's crazy how often we'll get into an environment, work a case, and see like 3 remote access tools on systems. Like, what are you guys using? They're like, I don't know. Our MSP
got Splash Top.
Yeah. And we've seen incidents from that before too, where a prior MSP had a compromised client. They were able to get to that MSP's remote access, and guess what? They still had a connection to an old customer's environment. Yep. And it's pretty scary stuff.
Or if I'm an attacker and I land on a box and I see that TeamViewer is already there, whether it's like in use or not, you know that's something that's basically whitelisted, and so you just install a fresh TeamViewer with your own creds, and then voila, instant backup.
100%. Then, persistence made easy, man.
Yeah. Well, it's always fun too when you throw out the tools in an incident and just get inundated with encoded PowerShell right away. Just like, oh no, wait, that's their tool.
Yeah, we've seen that too. It's like, stop encoding your tools, MSPs. There's no need to. Leave them in clear text so we can see exactly what they're doing right away.
Yep.
Yeah. So maybe talk about like what's some trends you guys are seeing that they're good, or trends that are bad. Like, what are you scared about, or what are you happy about? Just give us a little context there.
The main trend, I've been saying it for a while, and we're starting to see it come true, thankfully for us, is that cyber insurance is starting to require more things. Like the carriers are starting to catch up. And the main ones that I've seen so far are log retention longer than 90 days. I think they will ultimately get to a year. And the main 3 things are Microsoft 365 firewalls, and they just say Windows systems. They're not very explicit at this point. That list is going to grow, and they will get more explicit, because when they first started doing this with MFA, it was just like, do you MFA? And then,
What do you mean? Everything, you MFA.
and then it became like, do you MFA on Exchange? And like got very specific. And so we're at the beginning of that journey now. But that is where, because so many different things have been requiring log retention and monitoring, PCI, HIPAA, HITRUST, CMMC, like you name it, it's in all of them, but none of those from a small business perspective have enough teeth to be worried about it on the realm of like, am I going to make payroll this week? Or like, am I concerned that my PCI data isn't properly stored? It doesn't get on their radar. And so until they have that wake up call of, okay, I need to do my insurance policy renewal, and the insurance company's like, no, unless you do all this stuff. That's what we've seen the wake up as. And so there is kind of like what you were talking about earlier with the auto dealers scrambling. There's a little bit of a scramble going on for trying to meet those type of requirements. The bad part of that is still the search for that easy button that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Or that triangle of, good, fast, and cheap,
Right.
And you see often that, the good gets shaved off and they get the fast and the cheap.
Well, and every carrier has their own definition of things. So, like, what's the definition of a SOC? And they basically took the 1990 definition of a knock and then replaced the S, the N with an S, and then added like security in a couple more places. So it's all kind of over the map, but it will be figured out, and we just need the definitions to catch up with the right solutions. Because we're not in a world where people are like sitting in a room together, staring at monitors anymore.
Yeah. Well, it's funny how they went from like 7 questions, yes, no, to like 200 questions overnight. They're like, oh, we're losing a lot of money.
It was Kaseya that did that, man. So July 4th, 2021 weekend was that Kaseya attack that impacted over, I think, 1,000 end customers. And that's when the carriers actually sat up and took notice. And they actually, I've seen some applications ask which RMM, like if you are using an MSAP, which RMM your MSPs are using. And so that's kind of an interesting thread that we'll see if that goes anywhere.
Yeah, they were asking for a while, do you use Kaseya products? Or they say, do you use Kaseya? And it's like, well, they have a lot of products. But then very quickly they started to realize that they're asking the wrong question, and they start to ask, who has hooks into your environment?
Yep.
And not picking on Kaseya, all RMMs are the same functionality. It could happen to anybody.
Yeah, and then also, so like we talk about in a lot of those situations, you don't need full public access. So set up allow listing from your MSPs to those endpoints so it's not open to the world. That would have prevented that attack, right? So going back to SolarWinds as well. And I think that it was a combination with SolarWinds and with Kaseya and the insurance companies. Well, everything, it was huge in the news, right? We've seen more coverage, I feel like, during that time than we'd seen before. And so people took note of that. But both of those, regardless of what anyone says, were preventable attacks. And the point, you could have prevented the damage from being incurred later if you had, proper hygiene on your network infrastructure. Don't let the SolarWinds have untethered access to the internet. Boom. Then guess what? That second stage payload is pointless. It can't reach out to its home server, can't continue the attack. But I think the other thing contributing to this was like, the news hit, but then also the insurance companies just lost their ass because they didn't know what they're doing in the cyber world. So they had to get to a point
like pay out claims. That's why they're getting so lengthy
100%.
questions.
Yep. Yeah, they want to get to a point so they can prevent paying out that claim money. And this is a step which is actually great for everybody. It's sure they're going to profit more, but at the end of the day, they're going to force security on people that otherwise may not have those compliance requirements, but they need the insurance. And so I see that as positive progress.
I mean, I think probably all of our parents here grew up in cars that didn't have seatbelts in them.
Yeah.
There was a time where seatbelts weren't a thing because safety wasn't the biggest concern. And then over time, regulations come in to change those things.
Yeah.
Those cars were also like stainless steel and the size of a boat. So
one door weighed more than the car I have now.
Yeah.
Well, looking back at our history, regulations have driven that. Healthcare and finance were our biggest for a long time because they had to. Same with PCI. They had to do it. Now you're starting to see manufacturing with CMMC and, the FTC, GLBA safeguards that are now being pushed out, like I said, to all those different industries. I mean, it stinks that that's what the driver is, but it's a good progress.
What will end up happening really is that you're not going to get PCI compliant or HIPAA compliant because you want to be HIPAA compliant and PCI compliant, but because your insurance application asks if you need to be HIPAA compliant and are you, or do you need to be PCI compliant and are you? Because if you're not PCI compliant and you never get popped in your point of sale system, then nobody's going to find out you're not PCI compliant. But if you do get breached and you want insurance to cover you in the event of a breach, they're definitely going to ask questions about prove that you're PCI compliant. And if you're not, then it's like, well, you're on your own. No claim for you. No payouts at all.
And Oscar, you're so right about the insurance companies losing their shirt. So I was at Verizon on the wireline side for 5 years. And when I first got there, one of our bread and butter things was an incident response retainer. Because at one point in time, Verizon was one of the biggest security companies, at least for DFIR on the planet. And for like $150K a year, corporations would just give the money to have us on speed dial.
Oh, yeah.
And then one day that faucet just turned off because Lloyd's of London started writing cyber insurance policies.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I would just ask customers, like, can I see one of those? I just want to read the, and it was so Wild West. This was 2014-ish. And when I started seeing those, and then Mandiant would come in with like a $0 retainer so they could get to the front of the line if that did hit the fan. And so that business was gone, but that began the Wild West of cyber insurance, of just land grab. But unfortunately, some of those bets are coming home.
Yeah, you're right. It was the Wild West then. Yeah, so I think we're about out of time. I really appreciate you guys being on. This has been a lot of fun for me, and we appreciate you guys being here.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, for sure. We like to close our show with a shout out to someone, something, someone you appreciate. Just want to say thanks to. So I'm totally putting you on the spot, Chris, since we just met today. You got a shout out for her?
Well, I mean, she's not listening, but I'll give a shout out to my wife. But she's amazing.
Now she's going to get a copy of the episode.
Oh, yeah. You better tell her how awesome this podcast was, and she has to listen to this.
Yep, I will let her know.
Wives get a lot of shout-outs on here because they are awesome.
Yeah.
They put up with us.
Yeah. How about you, Jeremy?
I'm going to give a shout-out to Thinkst. We're on the topic of security, and the guys over at Thinkst, they make canaries. Our honeypot is actually kind of modeled off the Thinkst canary, and they're just constantly doing good stuff in security and putting out good work and good community resources. And you guys have a lot of good community resources too as well. If you guys haven't been to the FRSecure site, please go into the resources category, because they have a lot of great DFIR templates and instant response templates and things of that nature. But yeah, they're always doing good things over there.
Yeah, appreciate that. I'm gonna go first today, Brad, because last time you stole my shout out. I'm afraid you're gonna do it this time too. See if you're in my head. I'm just gonna give a shout out to Chris Casson. He's one of our blue teamers. Awesome case handler. He's been with us a couple years. He's moving on. Sadly, we're going to miss him a whole lot. But just want to give him a shout out. He's been fantastic, and we're going to be missed here for sure.
Round of applause.
Yeah.
When I heard it, I asked if there was an over/under on when he'll be back, because he misses us so much. Not yet.
We'll get that pool rolling after he's gone.
Good.
We can't let him bet. It could be jaded. So,
True.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Insider trading there.
Yeah.
So I'll give a shout out to my daughter. She's going through some post-COVID complications, and being 16 and teenager and having medical issues is never fun. And she's maintaining grades, and really proud of her.
Yeah, man. Well, I hope she gets through those issues quick and back to 100%. That sucks.
Me too.
I hate to hear that. All right, guys. Well, thanks again for joining. Thanks to all our listeners. Another reminder before we shut down, send questions, comments, thoughts to our Proton Mail, unsecurity@protonmail.com. And everybody have a safe, happy week. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks,
Adios.
guys.
Thank you.
Thanks.